Welcome to the Zentangle Project Pack number 20. Throughout this project pack, we're going to be talking about the tangle genus that we are referring to as blossoming tangles, which are tangles that radiate out from a center point. They kind of set themselves up like an island and blossom open on your tile. They build upon themselves inwardly or outwardly and can be embellished in so many ways, so we're going to have some fun with that. In this lesson, I'm going to be introducing a new blossoming tangle that we call Y4. So before we get started on our main lesson, I'm going to do just a small tutorial for you guys to look at and get the idea of the basic strokes of Y4. So this is just for your viewing pleasure right now. And this tangle, which is cleverly named in honor of one of my kids, is called Y4, named for my son, Wyatt. So this is actually so sweet, and it unfolds in kind of a magical way with a fun little element at the end that kind of brings it all together. So here are the basic strokes of Y4. We're going to start out similarly to Muka, but end in just a little bit of a curve there. And then mirror that image on the other side. And here's where the fun begins. We're now going to connect these points with the inner line stroke and see how it kind of imaginary goes behind there. And the same down here. And then we cap it off by connecting the top. And there you have this sort of basic element of the Y4 stroke. Maybe we can add some complementary auras, embellishing the long strokes. It has this kind of trumpeting and announcing some sort of good news, I imagine. Just to give you an idea of what Y4 is in its basic form. And then we're going to play around with it on a zandala tile. You can further emphasize the curving, scrolling effect with a little graphite. So there you have basic Y4. So I'm going to grab one of my gray zandala tiles that was included in my project pack. And you can follow along with me with whatever materials that you might have at home if you do not have this project pack. So to begin this tile, I'm going to use a black 01 pen. Now we're going to set up our tile with some kind of anchor lines before we begin our Y4. And this is all very much by eye. I'm not measuring with anything specific other than my finger. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my index finger in the middle of the tile. And I'm going to mirror the shape of the tip of my finger, like that. And then I'm going to do this again. And my goal is to do it 5 times around the tile. Just a U shape. See how my finger fits right in there as if I had traced it. So you kind of get the setup here. I'm going to do this 5 times around the center of our tile. And these are not measured out. They are not perfectly the same size. But here they are anchoring the center of this whole composition. And now here we are going to add our first set of Y4. Starting from the bottom here of one of these U shapes, I'm going to now draw those sloping, beautiful, curved lines that I showed you on the small bijou tile. And now we can start putting them together by connecting the end of this curve with the inner line, and as if it went right behind, connecting the bottom, and then connecting the top. I'm going to turn my tile and add another. And your curved lines are going to have their own personality, and it might change the way your Y4 looks on your tile, but that's part of the wonderful surprise. Turn my tile. The zandala gives us a nice surface to kind of embellish our strokes, maybe draw a little larger than we normally do on a smaller tile. So don't be afraid to draw a little larger than you usually do. Got a lot of space to fill here. I love that illusion as it comes together, showing you how this kind of scrolls behind itself. Getting a little more confident each time you draw this new tangle. And cap it off. So here we are. Things are starting to come together. Now I'm going to go back to those original lines that we drew down as our anchor points. And this might feel a little awkward, but I promise you, as we start to pull it all together, it's really going to fill in beautifully. So I'm going to take these initial lines that we drew at the beginning, and now I'm going to continue on and add a curve that kisses the line it's next to. Continue on and kiss that line. Go to the next one, continue on, and right up against those Y4 long stems. And again, you might be looking at your tile and saying, this is strange, but we're going to pull it all together. Last one. There. Now we're going to go back and connect these little scrolly lines, just like we did with the first layer. this point here and this point here as if a line was drawing behind. At the bottom. And just for fun and a little bit of a change, when we cap off the top of this, I'm going to just add a little divot like that. Turn our tile. Now I'm going to connect this couple straight across. Bottom. And then little divot. Every so often, perhaps you add a playful curve, or our lines aren't quite straight, and it just gives your Y4 that much more character. The last couple. Now you can really see that radiating element of this genus, this blossoming tangle it fits so nicely into. Now that we have our framework set for us, I'm going to go in and add some embellishing lines. We're just going to start to bring this to life a little bit. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to those original anchor lines that we made, and I'm just going to aura those. Carefully and deliberately, adding an aura around each one of our original anchored lines. And now I'm going to let's add a little drama. Let's get some heavier ink down on this gray tile. I like the idea, like I demonstrated earlier, to add some kind of accentuating marks right here. I'm going to show you one whole Y4, and then you can continue on at your own pace, your own comfort. And where these lines curve, I'm going to add a little weighting, sort of taking off, adding a dollop of ink as it goes around the back, curves around. Taking off and landing really helps kind of smooth that out. Perhaps some stripes, kind of giving it a little sparkle. Just lifting the pen ever so slightly. Maybe further emphasizing that curve just a bit. And if you'd like, you can add a aura. Now I'm going to continue on and do the same thing to this one. Sort of an essential part of any tangled composition is that duality of line work and inking in, balancing your fine strokes with something to catch the eye. Playing around with the different pressures of a pen, and you can get different qualities of line strokes. It's kind of cool. Now I'm going to do something similar to this inner ring of Y4. I'm going to add, maybe I'll add an aura line at the top of this curve, and then mimic the strokes of the larger Y4, kind of giving it a shadow. Adding that extra aura, sort of reacting to the aura lines of our anchor points. Playing around with different ways that you can embellish this tangle. I'm sure you're going to figure out some fantastical ways of your own. Okay, so I'm going to put down my 01 pen now. And I'm going to use one of these gray pens that you received in the kit. It's the light cool gray 05. And I'm going to shake things up a little now and add a different tangle to our tile. And this tangle, as some of you are familiar with, is called Bronx Cheer. And we're going to add some Bronx Cheer berries that are going to grow out of this center radiating Y4. So I'm going to draw a stem, extending out, and then with a nice round orb shape, I'm going to start building my berries. And this is another radiating tangle, if you will. Here we started with a center orb, and all of these other orbs are growing off and slightly behind the ones that are already there. My goal is for this berry to grow and just touch or go behind these Y4 elements. And that'll sort of dictate how large your berry becomes. You can kind of have it grow and balance. Turning my tile. Some of my berries might be larger than their neighbor, and that's okay. Anytime you have a difference in shape or a slight imbalance, it only represents the fact that it was you, the artist, that created it, and not a computer. There. You can have a look now at all of your berries and maybe add a line or two that seems necessary to appeal to what you're looking to add. I'm going to put this pen down now for a bit and now switch gears to the big fat jelly roll that we have. Nice tip that lets lots of gel ink out at once. You can always kind of get that gel pen going on the back of your tile if you need to. Now I'm going to fill in these berries with the white Jelly Roll ink. And you can see that I'm not quite going to all the way to the edge, which certainly makes it easier. But you want to leave that original line, that original gray line there to help define these berries. And all you need is a light touch with this pen. And it fills in these little spaces so well. You can even leave a highlight here and there if you like. And the white gel ink just sort of jumps off this gray paper. There. Now it's starting to really make a big difference. That contrast is incredible. The dark black ink and the subtle grays. And now we have this luscious white ink slowly adding to this overall composition. Enjoying the time it takes to fill these spaces in, watching that ink go from shiny wet to matte dry. I just love how that looks. Blossoming, interesting, intricate. All right, I'm going to switch gears now and put my Jelly Roll aside, and I'm going to pick up this big fat tip Micron 10 cool gray, and I'm going to start to add some texturing backgrounds. This is sort of another quality that you can add to a tile that just adds interest and layers. So within these kind of sloping, curved areas of the Y4, I'm going to add some tipple, or just basically some orbs. But because this pen has such a fat nib, these orbs are going to fill themselves in pretty efficiently. So you won't have to go in and color much of the backgrounds when they nestle up against one another. And if you go kind of slowly and deliberately, that ink is going to spread just the right amount. So this is just one part of this. We are going to continue on adding different elements. So fear not, or don't assume that this is the end. There is more to come. Just using this fat, inky tip to put down some orbs in this faint gray. It's very similar to the color of graphite, actually. One might not know what tool you used. It's kind of cool. I'm going to fill in each one of these with slow, deliberate orbs, and varying the size of the orbs definitely adds interest to the texture. So I'm sort of purposely adding some smaller ones and larger ones as they fill the space. Turning my tile. Oftentimes with the texture tangles, it's not so much about perfected lines because it's meant to enhance other things going on. It's going to be fading into the background. Using this larger tip pen, things move along pretty quickly. I'm kind of getting all these ideas in my head of other ways to use a larger tip pen. So I'm going to do this same textured filler down here in these smaller Y4, but if you have another idea, I welcome and invite all kinds of exploration. I'm certainly looking forward to seeing all the brilliant embellishments that everybody will share. Filling in the same way down here, but because it's a smaller space, you'll have to adapt the size of your tipple. It is kind of convenient how this pen just fills in the gaps all on its own. That's kind of sweet. So before I go in with this luscious little red pen, I think I'm going to pick up my black 01 again and just add a few more inky touches to further round and enhance what we have going on here. Specifically, I'm noticing down here that I wanted to add a little extra ink, some rounding down here at the bottom. Basically just filling in that corner. It's kind of like dust in the corners. Everywhere that these longer strokes meet, I'll add some weight. Taking off and landing as the strokes connect. Do you see any other place on your tile you'd like to add some extra ink? I mean, please feel free. I also may add a little collar around here. Whether you leave it like that or choose to fill it in, I think either way will be just right. Noticing the difference of how this narrow tip feels versus the 05, the 10, and we have the jelly roll, which is a completely different experience. I see these berries kind of floating out there, so I'm feeling like I'd like to add a little aura, just so they stand out a little bit more. Kind of enjoying the curve of the berry. Turning the tile so that your hand feels comfortable, but also can see what you're auraing. I love how I would never have drawn this awkwardly shaped line, but Aura shows me exactly what to do. Okay, so we're going to add a little color to this kind of exciting element. We have a Jelly Roll 08, this really beautiful candy apple red. And inside these textured orbs that we put down, I'm going to fill in with our red ink. And some of them will be solid, some of them will have a little highlight, always with a light touch with the Jelly Roll. Still adding texture, I love the red with the gray is really great. A light touch goes a long way. We're going to fill in all these little orbs. And then explore what that means when we start to shade. And further pushing texture behind and highlighting things so that they come forward. Playing with our perspective, all on this little round piece of paper. Again, when you leave a little highlight there on the red orb, you give opportunity for it to respond to different shading and highlighting scenarios. I kind of love that. So I'm going to do the same thing now with our smaller Y4. Just filling in those little open spaces with some red ink. Making sure I don't smudge any of my finished work. All right, I'm going to put the Jelly Roll away now, and we're going to start to add some shading and highlighting to this beautiful tile, making sure that all your Jelly Roll ink is completely dry because we don't want to be smudging that. So there's so many ways that we could approach shading here. I think to start out, I'm going to give a little bit of a shadow to our white Bronx cheer berries, just sort of along the bottom right with my tortillon, kind of smoothing it out. Sometimes on the camera it has a little shine to it, but there. Graphite does have a different feel to it when it's on top of this white jelly ink. Smoothing out as I go. Everybody has their own rhythm, how they like to shade. Sometimes people like to put all their graphite down at once. And sometimes like this, where we add graphite smooth it out. Seeing how the graphite fills the different spaces. On the Y4, it's going to seem a little like it's not doing enough, but I'm telling you, you'll see the overall effect. I'm going to add a heavy line of graphite kind of around the edge. I'm being pretty deliberate about this. You'll need to do that in order for it to have the effect. Gently smoothing it out and leaving untouched in the center. And you'll see that you can then use the white charcoal pencil to highlight the center. Kind of has a little glow to it. And maybe adding a heavy line of graphite on either edge here of this kind of folded bit. Smoothing it out a little. And again, further emphasizing this highlight that we left by leaving a gap with our stripes. It's very cool. Continuing on down here with these smaller Y4s, I'm doing about the same, adding that heavier line of graphite around the edge. Gently encouraging it in, and then just a touch of the white charcoal. I don't really see that I would need to use my tortillon with that right now. It seems like it's kind of blending in itself. Always having the ability to go back and add more if you like. That's looking amazing. I'm going to go perhaps maybe further shadow these longer Y4 stems, kind of really encouraging that illusion that these are behind. Kind of maybe using some of that extra graphite on my tortillon there. It's quite heavy at the base here, but I'm sort of smoothing out the graphite. Perhaps it's like a little reflection there. I kind of love it when my pencil gets to this point where I have a nice smooth edge. I like how the graphite comes out. If you want, you can add a little graphite around the berries on the outside. Just some extra elements that would further bring out the white. It's kind of a mist or shadow. Doesn't take much to add to the paper, but my tortillon has quite a bit of graphite on it now, so I think that's enhancing the amount that I'm putting down. Maybe one last touch here, adding a little highlight. Maybe I will smooth this one out with a little bit with a fresh tortillon. This is subtle, but it does help this sort of radiating effect, kind of setting it. This tortillon smooths it into the paper so beautifully. Very cool. All right, so I'm going to add my chop here and finding an empty space. It's kind of the great thing about a zandala is you certainly never know which way is up. Playing around lately with just layers of M's. And then inking in that space. Creating a interesting star shape. And maybe just because we can, adding a little red highlight for fun. So there you have some Y4. Very playful tile. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed sharing it with you, and I look forward to seeing what everybody does with this. Thanks for joining me.